COVID-19, Information and Misinformation. We are inundated with information about COVID-19 from TV newscasts, newspapers, blogs, other social media, different and sundry websites, family and friends, physicians and epidemiologists and other experts, as well as many so-called experts. My goals for this presentation are to provide some tools to help you parse facts from fiction and, to the best of my ability, with as little bias as possible, highlight sources that may not be as reliable as you might think, and also provide examples of resources for valid and trustworthy information. Even organizations such as WHO, the World Health Organization, that are not in the business of media studies, have realized that there is a need to fight not only this pandemic, but also to counter misconceptions, myths, and conspiratory ideas that are growing exponentially worldwide. It is clear that in these early stages of this pandemic, we do not have all the answers, but this does not excuse irresponsible reporting or irresponsible behavior. Social media has become the main source of health and other information for a large segment of the population. For example, Facebook and Twitter accounts have followers in the millions. We all are looking for remedies and cures, but as healthcare professionals, we know the difference between giving medications and giving a piece of advice. A medication can only be shared with a limited number of people. It depends how many tablets you prescribe. When the prescription has run out, there are no more pills and nothing more to be shared. But a piece of advice can be shared with an unlimited number of individuals, and more importantly, good or bad, we have very little ability to stop the dissemination after advice or an opinion has been expressed. A study done by the Bruno Kessler Foundation found 46,000 Twitter posts with links to COVID-19 misinformation were published each day during 1 month, March, on average. So this is the amount of misinformation on one single type of social media outlet. Very often we see quotes from famous people and experts, but do we always know if the quote is accurate or even if it was fully quoted? Here are some examples of statements that were not quoted in their entirety and may be misinterpreted or even taken out of context. The Haberman quote was used to show how even the liberal media supported President Trump's early efforts to stop the spread of COVID-19 in the US. The quote that was used by the White House was, "Did call Trump's order to slow travel from China, and it represented a pretty aggressive measure against the spread of the virus." What was not quoted was the continuation of this quote that stated, "The problem is it was one of the last things that he did for several weeks." Another example is a quote from Dr. Anthony Fauci that was trying to downplay the risk of COVID-19. The quote was, "You cannot compare the number of deaths of this COVID pandemic with the number of deaths caused by the annual flu, which is more than 40,000 annually." What was not quoted was the continuation, the subsequent sentence that said, "The number of deaths on this pandemic will be much greater." But there are other sources for taking things out of context. First, Dr. Phil is not a medical doctor. He has a doctorate in psychology, but is not even a licensed psychologist. Here he is expounding on the risk of COVID-19 and why the risk is so low that we shouldn't consider mitigating strategies such as shutdowns. He said, "In 2018, 61,000 Americans died of the annual flu. We have 45,000 people a year die from automobile accidents, 480,000 from cigarettes, 360,000 die from swimming pools, but we don't shut down the country for that." Maybe Dr. Phil is misunderstanding the word transmission. Transmission in a car engine is not the same as transmission of a disease, and as far as I know, there have been no reports of aerosolized transmission of car accidents. It is also unclear what the number 360,000 is trying to convey. If it meant drownings, in 2018 a total of 4,000 people drowned in the United States. People want explanations, and when explanations or understandings of how dramatic and life-changing events are lacking, many fall back on conspiracy theories. Unfortunately, we usually do not deal well with uncertainty. Some conspiracy theories may actually result in harm. On April 2nd, a wireless tower was set ablaze in Birmingham, England. The next day, a fire was reported at 10 p.m. at the telecommunication box in Liverpool. An hour later, an emergency call came in about another cell tower in Liverpool that was going up in flames. Across the UK, more than 30 acts of arson and vandalism have taken place against wireless towers and other telecom gears. Furthermore, roughly 80 other incidents were reported where telecom technicians have been harassed on the job. The attacks were fueled by the same cause, an internet conspiracy theory that links the spread of the coronavirus to an ultra-fast wireless technology known as 5G. There are other conspiracy theories circulating around the globe. For example, one is that SARS-CoV-2 was man-made and created for the purpose of profit by companies that could ultimately benefit from promoting and selling medications and vaccines. This quote is from an interview of a protester in Michigan complaining about the delay in rescinding the stay-at-home order by the governor of Michigan. We are against these big corporates that are trying to rack in all these dollars who created the disease and now want to make people pay for the cure. It is also interesting to see how this pandemic has polarized people along ideological lines. In this graph from Gallup, it can be appreciated how Democrats have a much gloomier outlook on COVID-19 than their Republican counterparts. 59% of Democrats polled between April 17 and 19 thought the situation surrounding COVID-19 was getting worse, while only 13% of Republicans tended to agree with this sentiment. On the other hand, during the same time period, 69% of Republicans thought things were getting better, while only 21% of Democrats agreed with this assessment. How individuals perceive the media reporting during COVID-19 pandemic also shows separations between different political ideologies. It is interesting to note that this trend has not changed very much when comparing statistics before 2018 with statistics during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's also interesting to note how people are being labeled according to which media outlet they are using for the information and are quoting. For example, people who only cite conservative news sources such as Fox News, Breitbart, One American News, The National Review are described as conservative, while the label liberal is assigned to those naming only liberal news sources. Mixed includes those who name multiple sources that cut the cross-partisan line or include neutral sources such as Associated Press, USA Today, The Economist, and then we have the undesignated ones who, when they are asked where they get their sources from, they cite the internet, TV, newspaper without being more specific than this. Accordingly, polls are being conducted along the same lines. Conservatives, people who use a mix of conservative and liberal media outlets, and liberals. One poll extrapolated that over half of Americans with a conservative news media diet, 57%, believed COVID-19 is no more deadly than the seasonal flu, compared with 36% who have a mixed news diet and 28% with a liberal news diet. Unfortunately, misinformation is rampant among many different radio and television shows. For example, Rush Limbaugh, a conservative talk show host with more than 15 million listeners, recently made the following statement. "This virus is the common cold. Why do you think this is COVID-19? This is the 19th coronavirus." And this was actually stated on March 11, 2020. Let's look at some data. This website has a video link that shows a dramatic daily change in the number of deaths due to COVID-19 compared to other illnesses. On March 1st, 2020, there was one reported death in the US due to COVID-19. However, by April 7th, the number of deaths due to COVID-19 was greater than any other cause of death by any other disease in the United States. How do we judge whether an information source is twisting the facts to suit a political narrative? Two things to pay attention to. One, who is benefiting? Is it a specific group or partisan group or a company? And second, what is the source of the underlying information? Another thing that we need to look at is research itself. There's tremendous onslaught of articles on COVID-19, and this is both beneficial, more knowledge in almost real time, and detrimental. There are an enormous number of studies and papers available that have never been peer-reviewed. The questions we need to ask ourselves are these articles genuine or fake? Is the article good or bad science? Is it well written, or written in such a way that it doesn't provide sufficient or appropriate information about, for example, methods, statistical methodology, or even more? This site, medRxiv, enables posting of articles that have yet to be published. However, beware. Take a look what is written right here. Caution. Preprints are preliminary reports of work that have not been certified by peer review. They should not be relied on to guide clinical practice or health-related behavior and should not be reported in news media as established information. Unfortunately, many articles that are being posted on medRxiv is being used by the media in order to sensationalize some of these findings. This is an example of an article about aerosol transmission of COVID-19 on a bus. The abstract reads, "This COVID-19 outbreak was transmitted by public transport, resulting in 11 confirmed cases, including 1 asymptomatic case and 2 third-generation cases. The furthest transmission distance of COVID-19 in the airtight, air-conditioned bus reached 4.5 meters. This contagious virus could float in the air for 30 minutes and cause infection." This article was subsequently retracted without any explanation to why it was retracted. Unfortunately, the information from this article had already been picked up and reported by several news outlets. Is the source of information being addressed by an expert? I don't know if the reason is that there are not enough experts out there that are available for interviews or comments, or if there are people who claim they're expert, or that claims are being made by authoritative figures that shouldn't comment on issues not within the area of expertise. Here is one example aired on March 20th, 2020, where this quote-unquote advisor to Stanford University School of Medicine was interviewed about his opinion about a recent study suggesting benefits from using chloroquine as a treatment for COVID-19 patients. This is what he stated. "A well-controlled, peer-reviewed study carried out by the most eminent infectious disease specialists in the world showed 100% cure rate against the coronavirus." Two things. Mr. Regana is a lawyer and not a medical professional, and according to Stanford University, Gregory Regano is not an advisor with Stanford School of Medicine. Now, let's go one step further. Let's have a look at this now very famous, or depending on your point of view, infamous article. This article was published in a journal called the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents, and it was a study from France. In this study, 42 patients were recruited, 60 of them in the control group. In the active arm, 20 patients received hydroxychloroquine and 6 additional patients received hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. So the study was a total of 26 patients getting the medication, and they were followed up for 6 days. 20 people finished the trial, 1 left the hospital, 1 couldn't tolerate the drug, and 3 went to the ICU and 1 died. In this study, outcomes was measured by looking at the amount of virus from nasal swabs. Interesting enough, the results only from the 20 people that finished the trial were reported, and the 6 individuals, 1 who left the hospital, 1 who couldn't tolerate the drug, and 3 who went to the ICU, and 1 who died, their data were never included. But there are more problems than this in this study. First of all, the article appeared as a preprint in medRxiv on March 16, 2020. On March 16th, it was submitted to the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents and accepted the next day. It had a turnaround time of 24 hours for the peer review, and eventually was published online on March 20th. One of the authors, Jean-Marc Rolland, is actually the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents. There are also some ethical concerns with this study. The IRB approval of this study was obtained on March 5th. In the paper, it is stated that the patients were followed for 14 days. Yet the paper was submitted for publication on March 16th. Also, according to the European Clinical Trial Registration website, patient was supposed to have a PCR evaluation on day 1, day 4, day 7, and day 14. In the paper, data are only shown for 6 days. Now let's go back to the ethical issues. An IRB was obtained on March 5th. They were followed for 14 days. That means the study shouldn't have been finished until March 19th, yet it was submitted for publication already on March 16th. So even though it's written in the paper that the patients were followed for 14 days, there could only be 2 reasons for that. One is it's not correct, or they started enrolling patients before they received the ethical approval to start the study. Can this type of misinformation be dangerous? Well, a recent study from the Veteran Administration here in the United States showed the following. A retrospective analysis of data from patients hospitalized with confirmed SARS-CoV-2 infection in all of United States VA Veteran Health Administration medical centers until April 11, 2020. 97 patients had been treated with just hydroxychloroquine, 113 were treated with hydroxychloroquine and the antibiotic azithromycin, or Z-Pak, and 158 received standard supportive management. So what were the results? 28% who were given hydroxychloroquine plus usual care died, versus only 11% of those who were getting routine care alone. About 20% of those getting the drug plus erythromycin died too, but the difference between that group and usual care was not considered large enough to rule out other factors that could have been affected survival. So in this study, there was a 17 percentage point difference between those individuals who had received hydroxychloroquine and those who had not received hydroxychloroquine. So very clearly, the hydroxychloroquine was not beneficial. You could even conclude hydroxychloroquine was actually detrimental. Unfortunately, statements made by non-medical professionals are being discussed and even recommended in the national media. In this case, President Trump suggested on April 23rd that we should start to investigate if injecting disinfectant would be a good treatment for COVID-19. In my opinion, I do not think this needs to be investigated. We already know the answer to what might happen if someone injects themselves with a disinfectant. What about reliable sources? Do we have reliable sources out there? There are obviously arguments for and against many of the websites available today that assess the reliability and validity of claims and opinions being made in public, published in newspapers, made on TV, or even posted on different social media platforms. Some people believe that these sites themselves may not be unbiased observers. Others believe they can be trusted. In the next couple of slides, I will give example of a couple of these sites, and I will leave you to be the judge to their trustworthiness. This site you see here in front of you is Snoops. Now, Snoops got started in 1994, and the purpose at that time was to investigate urban legends, hoaxes, and folklore. And here are some examples from the sites, how they show and provide assessment of different videos that were recently circulated and quoted. For example, does this video show mass graves in Italy? And the answer was no, that video did not show mass graves in Italy. Is teens coughing on produce a disturbing trend in the US? A report insisted that teens doing dumb things on social media may be something less than the national craze. Now all that was false. And here's another claim where an MSNBC reporter was claimed to have said, "I hope coronavirus kills people and hurt Trump's re-election," and this quote was also false. But this is not only from the quote-unquote liberal media that Snoops gets this information. Here's a claim that you can find on Snoops, and it said, US President Donald Trump said hundreds of governors are calling him amid the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. And by the way, I copied and pasted this from the website, so I know coronavirus is misspelled. So is this a true statement or not? Well, it appears to be actually false. Donald Trump never said this. US President Donald Trump tweeted in November 2009 that, quote, Obama's handling of this whole pandemic has been terrible, and that he would never let thousands of Americans die from pandemic while in office. Again, it's a false claim. Apparently, Donald Trump never tweeted this. Third, former Fox News Bill O'Reilly wrote a viral essay claiming COVID-19 pandemic was caused by Chinese bioweapon. Now, there was a viral essay claiming this, but it was misattributed. It was not Bill O'Reilly that had written this essay. So this could be an example that at least on the Snoops website, they don't differentiate between what comes from the right-wing media and the left-wing media. Another great site is run by Ryerson University in Canada, and it's called Misinformation Watch. This portal is a project of the Ryerson's Social Media Lab at Ted Rogers School of Management, and it's funded by the Government of Canada via the Canadian Institute of Health Research. The aim of this project is twofold. One, put a spotlight on COVID-19 related misinformation, and two, to provide Canadians with timely and actionable information that we all can use to protect ourselves, our communities, and to flatten the curve. Now, in this portal, you have a lot of different resources, and one that I liked very much was this misinformation dashboard. In this dashboard, what you do is you can mouse over certain of the details that you see on the bottom here, and then you can see what the claim is and if the claim is true or not true. I moused over one of these sites and I found, quote, a person who died in Jordan due to COVID-19 was buried with his car, and it turns out that this was false. Google also has something they call Google Fact Check Tools. You can have this in different languages, according to different topics, and you also have availability to check the source. Here's one example. Canadian Army has deployed tanks in Toronto amid COVID-19 outbreak, and it turns out that no, Canadian Army had not deployed tanks in Toronto due to the COVID-19 outbreak. PolitiFact started in 2007 as an election year project of the Tampa Bay Times, which at the time was Florida's largest daily newspaper. From the beginning, PolitiFact focused on looking at specific statements made by politicians and rating them for accuracy. PolitiFact is run by editors and journalists who make up the PolitiFact team. As they clearly state on their own website, quote, no one tells us what to write about or how to rate statements. We do so independently using our news statement. And if you get in on this website, you will see statements being made by certain politicians and others. You can also track specific individuals and specific sites. On the website, they have a menu where you can select different types of information depending on the source of this information. This is from Nancy Pelosi's website. They assessed the truth, the mostly true, half-truth, mostly false, false, and very false, pants on fire statement made on Nancy Pelosi's website. As you can see here, there were around 12% of the things she said were true, mostly true 10%, half true 29%, mostly false 18%, false 18%, and pants on fire, meaning very false, 8%. Joe Biden, he had 14% truth, 21% mostly true, half truth 25%, mostly false 20%, and false and pants on fire together is 17%. We can compare that to Donald Trump. True 4%, mostly true 10%, half true 14%, mostly false 21%, and false and very false in combination 48%. Media Bias, or Fact Check, was founded in 2015. It's an independent online media outlet. It's dedicated to educate the public on media bias and deceptive news practices. And it rates various news organizations on quote-unquote factual reporting as well as ideological skew. Here is one example from their website where you can, for instance, look at media that are least biased. And there's a long list here. As you can see on the bottom of the slide here, you have a list of different outlets that you can actually go in. There are links to these outlets. And it's a very long list. Here's just the beginning of them from starting, I'm still on the A's here, and it goes on for 10, even 100 different sites, all the way down to V and W. You can also go in and look at questionable sources, and the same thing here. It starts with numbers, and then in alphabetical orders go all the way down, and it goes much, much further down, ending up with a Z. And again, hundreds of different links that you can look at. You can also look at conspiracy or pseudoscience. Again, a lot of different sources that you go in and take a look at. And what I've shown you here is just a small example of all the links that I have on the website. Here's another site where you can find media outlets that have been vetted for following a specific code or principle for reporting. It's called the International Fact-Checking Network. And at the present time, they have 78 different verified sources that are following their code or principles for accurate and trustworthy reporting. And here I'm just going to show you again just the beginning here. Started with an A, going further down here, and all the way down to V, which happens to be a Swedish website. And all these have been vetted, and all these are following these very specific codes. So what are good sources of trustworthy information? In the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you the names as well as the links of some of these sources. But as you will see at the end of this presentation, I have created a Google Doc where you can go in and see the updated information about these and other sites as well. Some of the most trustworthy information today comes from the World Health Organization, from Centers for Disease Control and Prevention here in the United States, as well as from the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, as well as the Pan American Health Organization. You can also find epidemiological data from a website called Our World in Data, Johns Hopkins University, and then we also have publications that focus specifically on COVID-19. MMWR, or Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, is published by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The National Academies Press is also a very good site where you can find information from the National Academy of Medicine and specific questions that have been posed to the National Academy of Medicine where they have experts answering specific queries. We also have specific information for dentistry, and I'm just putting up 3 here. There are many more. Center for Disease Control, they have a guidance for providing dental care during the COVID-19 epidemic, and those guidelines are being updated on a regular basis. The British Dental Association also have a website for coronavirus. The American Dental Association also has a COVID-19 center where you can access all the updated information posted by the American Dental Association. What about misinformation? The World Health Organization actually has a site called Mythbusters. NewsGuard, Coronavirus Misinformation Tracking Center, as I showed you previously. Ryerson University has a Misinformation Watch website. PolitiFact, Snoops, and there are many others. Media Bias, Fact Check, the International Fact Checking Network, the Coronavirus Facts, Data's Coronavirus Alliance Database, Google Fact Check Tools, and there are many others. Even well-known publications such as New England Journal of Medicine, British Medical Journal, the Journal of American Medical Association, The Lancet, and Science have now dedicated sites only for coronavirus information, where you don't need to have any subscription to any one of these publications. Even publishers such as Elsevier, Wiley, Sage, they also have now open access to everything they publish surrounding coronavirus epidemic. The Copyright Clearance Center provides access to even more sites with free information. And then LitCovid. This is a curated literature hub run by the National Library of Medicine. This page was copied on April 23rd, and on this date, this site provided free access to almost 6,000 different articles. Lastly, I would like to share with you a link to this Google Doc I mentioned earlier, where I have listed all the websites mentioned in this video. And I hope you will be able to help by sharing important links that I can add to this document. On this slide, I have listed the questions that I have addressed in this presentation, but the most important one, which I had not addressed, is the last one. How recent is the information? Information about COVID-19 is coming at us at a very, very fast pace, and what we thought was correct 2 weeks ago may not be correct any longer. I hope this presentation provided some helpful information on how to deal with misinformation that are flourishing during these uncertain times. Thank you for your attention.